Hi, everybody. Happy New Year's Eve if you're watching this on New Year's Eve, because that's when I'm recording it. Um, I said I would do an end of year wrap up, and I'm going to do so. I There's going to be a lot of stuff to talk about, and because I asked for questions, I'm going to answer those questions first because I wouldn't want you to wait through all the other stuff I'm going to talk about. So, we'll start with the questions. Um, these were all via Twitter. I don't think anyone asked any questions on the Facebook fan page, so I'm going to go ahead and look up. I forgot to write down the names of those who asked these questions. Okay, Mike Stop continues, which is an excellent name. Asks the question, what trends do you see developing in sci-fi fantasy for 2017? Um, I feel like, what do we have? Our big fantasy, it remains probably Game of Thrones, right? Which taught us that being extremely dark is a heck of a way to make a lot of money. And our big sci-fi, fair to say, is the return of really high quality Star Wars films. And those taught us that you can, have some fun. Rogue One I think is a little bit darker than many of them, but there's still genuine laughs in it. So I think the trend that I'm starting to see, and also by the way, I think you can fairly call a superhero movie some mix of fantasy or sci-fi. The Avengers has got Thor and Iron Man in it, which is about as sci-fi and fantasy as you're gonna go. Um, so I think that what we're gonna see as a trend in 2017, what I hope at least, is that people understand that you can have a pretty fun balance of seriousness, darkness, and lightness and humor. So hopefully we'll see, I don't know, just overall fun in sci-fi and fantasy. That's what I'm hoping to produce in mine. The stuff I'm writing now is a little bit, I want to say, a little bit goofier than I have in the past, and hopefully that will be indicative of other people's attitudes as well, because goofy is fun sometimes. Goofy is fun most times. The second question asked by Mike Stop continues. How do you intend to grow artistically next year? Um, I'm trying a couple of new things, but technically those things are from this year. You'll hear about them in a bit, but how do I intend to grow artistically in the year ahead? I would really, I'd like to start reading a lot more. I've mentioned elsewhere, but I stopped reading almost entirely for a number of years once I started taking writing seriously, because I have a tendency to sort of soak up the tone of what I'm reading, and I was terrified of just reproducing somebody else's work without realizing it. I don't want to plagiarize, even if it's not on purpose. So I stopped reading, with the exception of when I was curating bundles. So I would really like to start feeding my brain a little bit more. The way I said to someone when I was basically explaining why it was a poor decision to stop reading was that it's like a chef who decides to stop eating. You know, you have to continue to build your mental repertoire and library of things. So to grow as an artist, I would like to start, sampling a lot more other people's art. But also I'll be trying new things. I'll talk a bit about a book that I'm writing in someone else's setting. I'll talk a bit about a children's book. That's that. And the third question was about temporal contingency. Specifically, did you ever get around to making a graphic timeline explanation for temporal contingency? I did get around to doing that just yesterday or so. If you want to see it, you can click the thing up here, I think is where it's going to go. Unless you're on Facebook, in which case you can just go to my YouTube and get it there. But hopefully it will clarify things. I'm not great at the whole graphical explanation thing yet. But those are the questions I was asked, and I hope they were useful answers. Or at least interesting. If I can't be useful, I hope at least to be entertaining. So, let's talk about the year, shall we? 2016. I know that 2016's reputation is that it was a terrible, terrible year in which a lot of terrible things happened and a lot of very important and wonderful people were lost, and all of that is true. None of that is false. All of those things happened. I'm not here to talk about the bad things in 2016, at least not the global or um, celebrity bad things. I'm just going to talk about how my 2016 was, and everyone else can talk about how theirs was. So, um, we'll start with I'm an author. Let's start with the books that I released. I released Temporal Contingency, which is Big Sigma number 4. I released Ickerwell, which is Free Wrench number 3. I released The Redemption of Desmarest, which it's technically a Book of Deacon side quest, which don't get numbers. But if I was going to give it a number, it'd be Book of Deacon 3.5, because while it's not 100% clear, The Redemption of Desmarest takes place in between Book 3 and Book 4 in the series. And I released Between being originally the Bad Idea exercise, and that's my most recent release. And it has indeed been a bad idea. I mean, people like it, but not a lot of people have read it because it's really hard to sell, as I suspected. But I had already written most of it, so why not write some more? Also coming out this year is books that I did not put out, but others did. In Germany, German readers were able to buy Die große Zusammenkunft, which is the Great Convergence in German. And it's been doing rather well. I think, I'll check. It's spent a lot of time in the top 1,000. At this very moment, the first one is right around 600 overall, and the second one is right around 800 overall. So, still in top 1,000 over in Germany. I'm very pleased. It's reasonably well reviewed too. Of course, I have to translate the reviews, so they might not have the tone that that the writer intended. But that's that. Also released this year, Bypass Gemini and Unstable Prototypes were both released as audiobooks by Books in Motion. And I gotta tell you, I don't like listening to my own writing. It makes me feel uneasy. But I did give a proof listen, and I have to say that the narrator, who I will now look at his name, I should have prepared for this better. Those books are narrated by John Forbes, and he did a good job. I'm very pleased. I hope anybody who picked up the audiobooks has enjoyed them. Also, I personally self-funded the De Karen Apprentice reading by Karen O'Brien. She is a spectacular narrator. I think she did a fantastic job. And how are these doing? I don't know how the Bypass Gemini and Unstable Prototypes books are doing because they're reasonably recently released, and I don't get any feedback until like 6 months after from the publisher. As for the Karen Apprentice, not doing great. I've sold a couple of dozen copies maybe. It's going to take a long time for that to make its money back. But it was very, very well done, and I'm happy that it's there. I like having every version of my book that I can have. So might hold off on doing more audiobooks myself until this starts to earn, but still I'm glad I did it. And those are the books that I put out. So what else? What non-literary stuff? Well, I don't know how many fans of mine, as I say readers, are aware, but I do a weekly podcast with Lindsay Baroker and Jeffrey Poole. It's author-oriented. It's about marketing, science fiction, and fantasy. It's called the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast. We've been doing it for over 2 years now, I think. Over 100 episodes. And we're getting a bit of a following, which impresses me and sort of terrifies me. Aside from that, let's talk about art, shall we? I got a lot of really great art this year. A lot. So much so that I don't think I'm going to show all of it because it would make this like a 45-minute video, and nobody wants to watch a 45-minute video. So I will then instead focus on my 3 favorite that I got this year. And those would be, one of them is back there. It's the painting. I've spoken in the past, but that's by Wolves Dragoon Studios, I believe. And it's The Birth of Min. And technically fan art, and quite possibly the coolest bit of fan art I've received. But there's stiff competition. Um, my favorite figurine that I received, I got Ether and Ivy this year, and it's not a contest. Ivy is probably the most beautiful thing in my cabinet of awesomeness right now. I think you'll agree if you are looking at pictures of it, which I intend to put up. The figurine was made by Vistar, or Seven Star. I'm not 100% sure how she calls herself. But, brilliant, brilliant sculptor, and keep your eyes peeled, there's more stuff from her in the future. And my favorite illustration is by Spooky Chan, and it is what I would call the definitive Lil Cooper from Free Wrench. So check that out. I really like the way it came out. The look on the face is perfect. It encapsulates the way Lil presents herself to the world. So that's really good. In addition, additional artwork, I called some bluffs in 2016. People had said they would, every time I show off one of my figurines, people ask the question, where can I buy one? And you can't. All the figurines that I have are custom made one-offs, and even if you could order one from the original sculptor, sculptors don't usually like to do a second identical figurine, and I don't have them made so they can be molded and cast yet. There is something that's in the works for that, but we'll see when that happens. So I created not one but two figurines you can actually buy. Both were based upon figurines sculpted by Alelia Clay, and both were digitized through the skill of Liz Landis. And one of them is Solby / Squee, technically two different figurines, but almost identical. The other one is Min, and both of them are available in solid color or full color from Shapeways. And I mentioned this earlier, and I don't think anyone bought them, so, you know, still cool to have, but probably won't do it again. Also from Shapeways, for people who are interested, as a byproduct of making the Min, the Min figurine that is, I also had a Min pendant made. And also, I guess I injured my hand earlier today. Look at that. Her head is sideways. This is hard. Backwards making. Doing. Difficult times. There. See? This took a lot more effort than it needed to. Oh, that's good. That's Min. That is an actual metal. This is bronze-covered stainless steel. You can buy that. $20, I think. Also for $20, you can get a bronze-covered Book of Deacon pendant, which is about the size of a quarter. Or if you don't like bronze, if you think that you are more athletic than that, then you can get a nickel / silver covered one. Pretty. Or you can get, if you are a winner, you can get a gold covered one. See, whoa, look at that. I think they all cost $20. One of them might cost $25. I don't know. I'm a great salesman. Also this year, I had stickers made. I had the Big Sigma sticker made, and I had the Book of Deacon sticker made, and these cost nothing. You just have to send me a message. So send a self-addressed stamped envelope to Joseph R. Lalo, P.O. Box 190, Colonia, New Jersey 07067. And because I went to New York Comic Con and I thought I might meet some fans there, I, on my home 3D printer, created a whole big bag of those pendants made out of plastic. And I gave away 2 of them. Nah, maybe 3. But, so I have a lot more. And I'm not going to sell them. They're going to go back in that cabinet until people ask for them. So that's what I've got going for this year. Now the question is, what are we looking at in the future? Okay, well, here's what we're looking at in the future. There will be a bundle in which you will be able to buy the first collection of my sci-fi books. This would be the Big Sigma Collection, Volume 1. That is going to be released, we'll say, late January, early mid-February-ish. You can tell I really planned this out. And it will feature the first 3 books of the Big Sigma series, so that is Bypass Gemini, Unstable Prototypes, and Artificial Evolution. It will also include 3 shortish stories. We'll call it a novella, and 2 short stories. The novella is called Beta Testers, and it is starring our friends Silo and Garrot. And then the other 2 are Squeeze Day Out, which is a comedic telling of a day in the life of Squee. And what's the other one? I know I wrote 3. Squeeze Day Out, Beta Testers. Oh, building a better pet. Building a Better Pet, which is about the creation of Solby. So, hope you'll enjoy that. Also coming out next year, I have finished writing Free Range 4. That is being beta read right now, so that'll probably show up March, April-ish of next year. And I don't 100% know what the name is. It's either going to be Fire Carousel, which I really like that name. It came up in comments on the Facebook fan page, but more likely it's going to be the Calderon Problem, because I didn't shoehorn in something that would warrant the name Fire Carousel. So maybe that'll be book 5. What else? I will be Pizza Dragon. The tentatively named Pizza Dragon, which is a one-off story written based upon a character that was developed by an artist named Project Endo. This is the character, in case you're wondering. Character's name is Blodgett, and she is a pizza dragon. And if you want to know more, then you will be reading that book at some point. We'll call it May, June-ish. And then there's the books that there's even more. Min's Family, which was the working title. I think it's going to be called The Family You Find. That is being illustrated as we speak. I hope to have that out sometime next year. Children's book with 32 or so illustrations by the very talented Brie Mercedes. And then there's the books that I actually have to write. Like, all of those are sort of done already. Then the books I actually have to write, I'm writing one, and I mentioned this briefly earlier, I'm going to be writing a story in Lindsay Broker's Fallen Empire series. I think I'm going to call it Rogue Derelict or Rogue Relic. I don't know. One of those. I also, because I asked you good people and you answered, the next full-length novel I write, aside from the ones that are already written, will be the Book of Deacon 5. And if I'm able to, I'm going to stack it. I'm going to follow it right up with The Rise of the Red Shadow 2. And so Book of Deacon 5 will follow where Book of Deacon 4 left off, and Rise of the Red Shadow 2 will probably fill the gap between Rise of the Red Shadow and the Book of Deacon, which will then give us a continuous storyline all the way from the birth of Lane to whatever the heck happens in Book of Deacon 5. Here's a secret. I haven't decided what happened in the Book of Deacon 5 yet. But that's the next thing I'm going to write, so until then. And I guess that about does it. So thank you very much, all of my readers and all of my listeners and all of my watchers, for allowing me to continue to look like a shaggy beast and sit in my home and make things up and tell you the things I made up and have that be my job. I hope to, in the year ahead, continue to produce things that you find entertaining, and I hope that a year from now I'm making another video about this, telling you about all the wonderful things that happened in 2017. Until then, have a happy, healthy, successful, productive new year. And, well, Thanks for reading.